Welcome. This is Story Impact, an interview series dedicated to authors, and I'm your host, Lisa Tolles. I started the series because I was really seeing a gap in the publishing industry where authors didn't have enough speaking opportunities to talk about their books and their artistic vision, about the impact that they hope those books make on the reading community, and really why those books matter to readers right now. So these conversations are not only about story, but about the meaning they bring to enrich and balance our lives. I am also a crime novelist, and you can find my books on Amazon and through other retailers. And to learn more, go to lisatolles.com. All right, so today I'm happy to be talking with award-winning mystery writer Claire M. Johnson to talk about her writing journey, her interesting career, and her new book, Fog City. Claire's first novel, Beat Until Stiff, was nominated for the 2003 Agatha Award for Best First Novel and was a Book Sense pick. Her second book in the series, Rue Morgue, received a starred review from Publishers Weekly, winner of the Gold from the Royal Palms Literary Award by the Florida Writers Association in 2022. Her new book, Fog City, which we're going to talk about today, is a crime novel set in Prohibition-era San Francisco, and that'll be released on July 30th from Level Best Books. This book is the first in a 3-book series featuring private investigator Maggie Laurent, which I also want to talk about today. And Claire is the president of Mystery Writers of America's Northern California chapter. Claire, delighted to have you here, and thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, so I definitely want to talk about Fog City and your writing path, but I'd like to begin by hearing about the points along the way that led you to where you are now. So I know you worked for University of California for a really long time as a writer and editor. What kind of impact did that part of your career have on your novels?
Actually, it had no impact. And in effect, it did have a negative impact in a way because I was editing material that was largely from non-native speakers, and it was engineering. And so I would come home from trying to edit a thesis and I would be completely brain dead, and I didn't want to even look at any word that was like and the. No, I didn't. But what did propel me to write was that I moved to a suburb, and I had never lived in a suburb before. And we moved here for the children's education. And I felt like such a fish out of water. I thought that, I was someone's mom. I didn't have a name. And it was very difficult for me. And so I was just terrified that I would look in the mirror one day and there would be nobody there. So I joined the California Writers Club and decided to write a mystery novel because I love mysteries. And it really was my dissatisfaction with living in a California suburb that prompted me to write.
Wow.
So, yeah. Well, and I still live here, and I like it a lot more, but I still feel like a fish out of water. But
well, for a fish out of water, you're having a lot of success. So I mean, obviously, you're finding a way to make it all work.
well, the writing community gave me a tribe. I never found a tribe out here. I still don't have a tribe out here, but I have a writing tribe. So, that was what I was looking for. I was looking for a tribe, and I found it.
You wrote a culinary themed mystery series. Can you tell
Yes.
us about Mary Ryan, your protagonist? And I'm curious how Mary compares with Maggie Laurent from your new book, Fog City.
Mary Ryan I wrote the Mary Ryan books. There are 2, as you mentioned. I wrote them because I was a pastry chef for 10 years. And the kind of copy, if you will, that restaurants were receiving in those days was very laudatory. I mean, restaurants were the new theater. People ate out. We ate out, my husband and I, before we had children. We ate all the time. And restaurants were the thing. And they're still sort of a thing, right? And my experience in the cooking world was so vastly different than what was being reported, let's say. And in fact, I was going to write a Kitchen Confidential, and Anthony Bourdain beat me to it. I know, lost opportunity. But I thought, okay, I can write a mystery. And it wasn't, I guess it was a little bit of an expose. I mean, people I know in the restaurant business who have read it have said, yeah, you just captured it. It really is a very, very difficult profession. And I thought mystery would be a really good way to highlight what is going on in the restaurant world. I mean, almost everybody I knew had a drinking problem. If they didn't have a drinking problem, they had a drug problem, because it's just so demanding, especially in the restaurant world at the say on the line. I mean, I was a pastry chef, so I didn't have to kind of deal with those pressures, but you take something to get up for your shift, and then you take something to get down from your shift, and it's just sort of this endless cycle. And because you work weird hours, then you only have restaurant people who are, or cooks, chefs who were your friends. So it was sort of this endless cycle. And I did love it on one level. I really loved cooking, but the stress was just too much. And then when I had my kids, I got out, because you can't have children and be in the restaurant world. It's
Mm.
just impossible.
Hmm.
I would start work and in September, and then I would be working nothing but 10, 12, 14 towards the holidays, 18-hour days. I go to work in the dark, I come home in the dark. It was brutal. It was brutal. And you can do that when you're young, but I was thinking, my God, I'm exhausted at 30. What am I going to do? I can't keep this up forever. I mean, physically, you just can't. It's very, very demanding. So
Mhm.
so I wanted to write about that world, and because I love mysteries, I thought,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to set a mystery in a restaurant. It was sort of quasi, the first one, Beat It Until Stiff, was sort of based on Stars. And I don't know if you're from the Bay Area, but Stars was like the restaurant. It was very chic.
Mhm.
It was at the top of the restaurant pinnacle, if you will. And it was, it was the restaurant at the time. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so thinking about Mary Ryan, your protagonist from that series, and Maggie Laurent from your new series, how do they compare and contrast? Are they alike at all?
I think they're alike in that they neither of them suffer fools gladly. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
But Maggie is pretty young. She's 25 years old. She's was brought up in a very Catholic household. And my protagonist, Mary Ryan, is she's Irish, as is Maggie, as am I. My mother was born in Ireland. And I think they share a certain savvy, and don't they don't need men to complete them. Let's put it that way. They are whole. I'm not going to say they're feminists, because you can't apply feminism to 1930. I mean, it just doesn't exist.
Mhm.
But Mary finds herself rejecting the role that certainly her background laid out for her. Either you become a nun, you get married, or you stay home, and then you cook meals for your father. And so she finds that world really, really stifling, even though she appreciates it. I mean, it's a safe haven in some ways. Mary Ryan was, she was in her 30s. She was a divorcee. She had been struggling with infertility. Her challenges are very, very different, and she doesn't need to prove herself. And I think Maggie does need to prove herself, if only to herself. Mary Ryan doesn't need to prove herself. She
Mm.
is, I think she is, even if, I did continue the series, but I think she is certainly at a crossroads in some ways, again, facing the same issues that I was facing. It's like, how long can I do this?
Mm.
And for Maggie, it's like, I can do this forever. So but she's learning who she is
Mm.
in a very parochial, but loving environment, and how far can she push it. And she finds that she can't push it very far. So
Mm. All right, so I have this kind of fundamental belief that there's no such thing as fiction, and one way or another, all of the most wildly inventive stories are somehow rooted in our life experience. Are any of your books secretly autobiographical?
I would say, I mean, I do agree with you, actually. And I think that certainly the Irish factor, my parents were expats. They came to this country in 1955. They were still rationing in England at the time. And so they fled. And I know so many people were, who had the same experience because, the expats kind of, hung together because they all knew each other. And, we belonged to the British American Club, and we all, a lot of my friends were the kids of expats. So the Irish factor is huge in my life. And it's both a big factor in any of the books that I write. And it's just not something I can't walk away from it.
Yeah,
And
of
I don't want to. It's so important to me. My heritage is important to me. We used to go back
course.
to Ireland when we were kids, and so
Mm,
there's an affinity there. And I would say, to be honest with you, I don't suffer fools gladly either. It's not a particularly nice trait, and it's actually something I'm still working on in my life, that I really don't have much patience for bigotry, uh, just fill in the blank. I really don't have much patience for that. And I'd say both women are pretty intelligent. I'm intelligent. I mean, there's certain aspects of my personality that do that I have culled from me to give it to them. And I hope that I portray them in some of the traits are great and some of the traits aren't so great, and that I see in myself,
hmm
that, maybe you need to work on that a little bit, Claire. And that is very, very true. I mean, you can't kind of keep that out. What
Right.
is also interesting though is the characters that you don't like and you trash in your novel who are based on real people. That's the interesting part, is when you do that.
Uh-huh.
And boy, have I done that.
Oh,
So
boy.
yeah, yeah, I have done that.
Well,
And
what
no
will
shame, no shame.
what will be interesting for me, and one of the things that I really like about series is the way the main character transforms from book one to the end of the series.
Yes,
I mean, a
yes,
lot of times just from book one to book three, they bear no resemblance to each other because, all of the challenges that we put in front of them cause them to kind of dig deep and figure out like who they are and what they're made of and where their strength comes from. So I'll be looking for that. I'm excited to read about Maggie when I read Fog City.
yeah, she really does. She changes quite a bit, and mostly because she's forced to grapple with issues, mostly of faith, that uh she's forced to come to terms with it.
Hmm
Books. And
hmm
I can't say that at the end of book three that she has faith or doesn't have faith anymore, but she certainly is tested.
hmm
And
hmm
the issue of what is justice. And
hmm
she was brought up in a pretty black and white world, I mean, at that time, the Catholic mass was still said in Latin. So
hmm
she was coming from a very, very black and white world,
hmm
and she's being forced to accept that the world isn't black and white, and what is considered justice might not necessarily be the justice that everybody thinks is justice.
mm
So, she's challenged a lot, and in a way that if she had stayed in the avenues, she grew up in San Francisco in the avenues, that her life would not be challenged in any way.
mm.
And I think on one level, I certainly feel that she appreciates that. But on another level, it's very disquieting because, she's not turning her back on her upbringing, but she questioned things about it.
hmm
So,
And
yeah.
that's what we do, right?
Yes,
I mean, like we're
yes.
we're told how we're going to think about the world, and we're told kind of, what path we're going to take. And then once we start to mature, a lot of times we realize that's not who I am anymore.
Right,
Like that
right.
kind of branching off period is always so painful. Talk about quote unquote the avenues for anyone who's not from San Francisco. What does that mean, and what did it mean in 1930?
In 1930, it meant that there were enclaves, and there still are to a certain extent. There were enclaves in San Francisco, immigrant enclaves. And, much like the mission now is largely Latinx, the avenues were largely Irish. There was a Russian contingent there. There was also a Russian contingent down at more downtown. North Beach was Italian. It was still very much Chinatown was obviously Chinese. And there was still the demarcation lines were very, very marked.
Mm,
That was, I mean, certainly it was true when I was a kid. I mean, still, it was when I was a kid. You would go to North Beach for, pasta. You would, if you, uh, the churches, all the churches out in the avenues. The mission was always a neighborhood. I think it's because it was close to the water. It was always a neighborhood that went through a lot of transitions. At one point it was Irish, at one point it was German.
mm,
It was a focal point
mm,
for sort of emerging immigrant populations. But it was, San Francisco, a lot like New York, that and Chicago,
mhm,
big cities that saw big influxes of immigrants who were trying to make it in the United States. And
mm,
I think they were treated a lot better here than they were certainly in New York. I mean, you didn't have tenements, you didn't have that abuse that went on of immigrants in New York and probably Chicago. But in San Francisco, you had so much money and opportunity from the gold rush where people just wanted to build. And
mm,
if you wanted, and I mean, the avenues, a lot of it was sand dunes and
mm,
they were building on sand dunes. I wouldn't want to own a house out there if there was an earthquake, but it was people were building on sand dunes. And so it didn't have the same, it didn't have I think the same, they weren't punished. Immigrants weren't necessarily punished, and they weren't a factor in elections by the time, say, 1930 rolled around. I mean, you had an Italian mayor, Giannini, who, was the founder of Bank of America. He really made a killing during the 1906 earthquake because he built up his banks like crazy because everybody else was, they didn't know what to do. That man saw an opportunity, stepped in. And so it really was a avenue of, the avenues they were Irish. And like I said, Russians, there's still a Russian Orthodox church out there. And you can see it in the way the churches are around the neighborhoods, and, the missions, Dolores Mission, that with Noe Valley was also Irish. So you had a lot of neighborhoods and you could tell what the neighborhoods were by the churches, which
mm.
are still there. Still there.
All
No
right, thanks.
parishioners, but still there.
No, thanks for that kind of cultural historic
Yeah, yeah.
retrospective. I'm from New England, so
Ah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
All right, so thinking about your writing career and your writing path, what one person has helped you the most? And was there one particular teaching that really stuck with you?
I wouldn't say it was one person. There were a lot of people who I really gained a lot of, I would say, insight into uh just how you put a book together. I mean, no, people don't realize this, but it's a lot harder than you think. It's a lot harder than you think to put a book together. And I think that's why mystery appeals to people who are just writing out because, you have the tropes. You want a body within the first, say, 30 pages. You want something to happen at, the midway mark. It really is.
Right.
There are guideposts
Right.
and there are lots of books on that. But I would say when I first started writing, there were two people who were really very important. And one was Penny Warner. She had a writing critique group in her house, and she at that time had come out with a deaf protagonist, which was considered very groundbreaking. And the other person is someone who just died, who was Camille Minikino. And
Oh,
she was incredibly supportive, a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I mean, this is a hard business. There's a lot of rejection that goes on, and they were always able to say, this is really, really great. And if you just change this one thing, if you just change this one thing, and sometimes it's really hard to change that one thing,
mhm,
but they were just very, very supportive. And I have always found the writing community very supportive. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I would not be here today. I would not be a writer with, various people in the Bay Area who were, they had my back and they were very supportive because writing is lonely.
mhm,
It's really lonely. And the biggest, I think, the hardest challenge is to take what's up here because again, as you pointed out, how personal are you writing? Who is your protagonist based on, if anybody? But it's up here and it's getting it to the page so that the reader, so that there's not a distance between you and the reader. How do you make what is something so personal
Mm.
outreach to a whole bunch of people? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the second biggest lesson I learned was that you can't please everybody.
Mm.
Some people will not like what you write. They just won't. And you have to accept that. I mean, if you're in a critique group, and Penny had a lot of people in her group, say, you're in a room of 10 people and 8 people don't like it and 2 people do, or vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
then if it's 8 people saying, oh, this isn't working for me, then you have to say, okay, need to go back to the drawing board. But if 8 people say, yeah, this is working for me, and the 2 other people say, nah, don't like it,
Right.
then you have a lot less, let's say, introspection ahead of you. You can say, okay. And also, I mean, it's really difficult when you're in a critique group and someone's just reading a chapter and they don't understand what's coming.
The context. Yeah.
Yes, the context.
Yeah.
And I think
Uh-huh.
that is also something, as a writer, you have to step back and you have to say, okay, what is my goal here? Why am I writing this? And I really do say that to myself. What is the point of this? Even if it's just a paragraph, what's the point here?
Mm.
Is there a point? I might, because I tend to go for the real super shiny, oh, this sounds so wonderful, I'm so brilliant. And then I'll look back and I'll say, this has nothing to do with the book. It just has to do with your ego. So you need to eliminate this. And that's really hard because, I mean, part of this is we want people, this is in some ways ego driven. You want to be told, yeah, I really like this book. You want to be told that. And
That's
it's, you know,
That's
you
really
do.
it's interesting to hear that because you spent so many years as an editor. When you were
Yeah,
talking, I was going to ask you, you're talking about you have a story up here and you have to kind of pull it out of your body to like put it
right.
on the page. Well, there's this thing in between here and the page, and it's called your inner editor. And it's not very nice and it's
I
not
know.
very understanding and it says very bad things. And I think we have to cultivate tools to kind of shut it up so that we can
Yes.
keep
Yes.
going. How have you dealt with that issue?
I, I, well, I had a real bout of insecurity right about the time I got the arc. And I thought, this book is terrible. What was I thinking? I think we all have doubts. And I think that what I tell myself is I always believe that you can become a better writer. I always believe that. I hope that I keep becoming a better writer. So my feeling is that I can step back and I can say, okay, I will make the best book better. And I tell myself, okay, I am an intelligent woman. I can, sometimes I go back and read old books and, how do you write? What is inspiring? And then, and often I'll read a really good book and I'll say to myself, they did this and this and this. It doesn't, it doesn't, uh, it doesn't undermine me. It actually inspires me. So then I'll say, okay, they did this, they did that. And I can't replicate what they're doing because it's not my book.
No,
But
but
I can say, okay, maybe I needed more attention here at the quarter mark. Or maybe I should have done this, I should have expanded on this. And I think part of part of the my most negative comments for me is like I tend to rush the end of a book because I've been living with this book for 6 months to a year. And I really feel like I've said everything I want to say about this book. And so
mhm,
I tend to rush the end
mm,
when maybe I should take a little more time and think about what I'm trying to wrap up. Do I need to wrap this up? Do I need not to wrap this up? And especially in a series, what
mhm,
do I need to plug in so that I have something to bounce off of in the next book?
mhm.
So it is, yeah, especially in a series, I think you are somewhat hampered because the book isn't done. It says the end, but it really isn't done because you've got another book coming and I have a third book in this series.
Mhm.
And I had to think about, okay, what do I need to salt in so
Mm,
that I've got something to jump off of? Because
mm.
you need those wee little anchors
Oh,
so that,
definitely.
and so for me, I just tell myself, I'll just write a better book next time. And that's what I try to do. I try and I mean, because we all have lots of doubts about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, if an author said to me, I have no doubts, I was like, okay, thank you. And I turn away because that has not been my experience. It hasn't been in my experience with other writers that I know
Mm-hmm.
that we, and it's because writing is so personal. When someone doesn't like your writing, it is personal. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't quite understand that. I mean, they think, well, you just wrote a book. Well, I wrote a book. I mean, they don't understand that there's so much of yourself that goes into a book. So when they don't like the book, it's very difficult to step back from that. But
Mm-hmm.
but I can do that now. I can say, okay, you didn't like it. Here's an author you might like. I try and just say, okay, no, not everybody is going to like your book, and you
Right.
have to accept that
Mm.
because then you let doubt cripple you. You
Mm-hmm.
can always change something that's written, but if it's not on a page, you can't change it. You can't make it better. And
Mm-hmm.
then the doubt starts tumbleweeding in your head,
Absolutely.
and then you're just sitting there staring at your monitor and you're paralyzed. But if you accept, okay, not everybody's going to like it,
Mm-hmm.
and I can always change what's on the page. I can
Mm-hmm.
always change it. So then you have it's not written in stone. And even if you have a book that's published, okay, make the next one. I'm going to make that better. This is what I see. This is what people are saying. And I used that when Beaten Till Stiff came out because it was, I mean, lots of people liked it, some people didn't. And I said, okay, what didn't they like? And what's the problem here? And
Mm.
interestingly, the most negative comments I got, and these I just immediately dismissed, were this woman is such a bitch. And I thought, okay, that's not a criticism I will accept.
Yeah.
I just won't accept it. You don't, and literally again, you don't like my writing. That's fine. Go
Mm-hmm.
find someone, you go find another author because I can't change that. And I
Right.
don't want to change it. I
Right.
wanted a pretty strong female protagonist
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and that's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, we'll see you later.
I like your use of the word tumbleweeding for one thing, but I want
Yeah.
to keep going. We only have a couple minutes.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
I
Sorry.
want to talk about Fog City.
Mm.
Author Margaret Dumas called this book dark, dangerous, and delicious. I literally can't wait to read this. How did the idea for this story emerge?
I wanted to write, well, I probably shouldn't say this, but I wanted to write about a secretary who doesn't want to be a secretary. I was a secretary for a long time. I hated my typewriter, and I thought that San Francisco is such a wonderful city that I would make it a historical.
Mhm.
And I, grew up on Chandler and Hammett. Hammett was, a big favorite of mine. So, I started thinking about, well, using the Maltese Falcon as a backdrop. Okay, so
Mhm.
what is this world like? So I
Mhm.
started doing some research and a lot and so much fun. So that's what I wanted. I want something. And 1930 was, post stock market crash, huge issues with labor. There were strikes all over the country, and
Mhm.
it was things were changing.
Mm.
Things were changing, and so prohibition was just ignored in San Francisco. I mean, virtually ignored. So it was and then you had this I don't ghettoization of Chinatown, a lot of hostility towards the Chinese because soldiers from World War I were coming back.
Mm.
Chinese were allegedly taking their jobs. So there's just a ton of tension there. So I
Yeah,
thought that would be a really great
a
jumping off
good
point.
backdrop. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
So what are you working on next? Are you working on book two now in the series?
I finished all three books.
Excellent.
Because I thought I'd have to self-publish them. So I
Mm.
thought, okay, if I have to self-publish these, if I can't find a publisher, then I'm going to hit the market, boom, boom, boom. Every 4 months, a new book is going to come out. So I wrote them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that book is done.
Mhm.
And I don't, I'm waiting to see what the reception is, if
Mhm.
I'm going to do a fourth. there are lots of things that are popping in the 1930s in San Francisco
Mhm.
that I could use as a new theme. Maggie still has room to grow. I mean, I left it kind of open-ended, so she, she's not hooked up with anybody. She's not going to get married. She doesn't have a love interest. So there's things, and I don't even know if she's going to have a love interest, but part of this is magic. You sit down and at
Yeah,
a certain, at
you,
a certain point, your
you don't
characters,
know.
yeah,
Yeah,
your characters tell you, okay, do this, do that.
that's
And
right.
so there's a lot. So I'm waiting to see how this series, the kind of reception it receives. The third book is really good. I mean, I'm happy with the first book. I really like the second book, but the third book is a little darker, and I like that. And then kind of as a spoof in my spare time, I'm writing what I call the serial killer book, where I went into Barnes and Noble one day to see what was selling, and every other book I picked up was a serial killer book, and I just thought, okay, and I personally find them very misogynistic, but I thought, okay, I am going to write a spoof on serial killers because of a writer who can't get published. So she sets up a website on how to be a successful serial killer, and things kind of take off from there.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it is actually, it's very humorous. It's not dark. It's silly and just fun.
All
It's
right,
not
hold up your book cover.
okay. Let's try
While
and
we
do
wrap
this.
up. Again, this is Story Impact, a YouTube series intended to showcase authors, their writing journey, and their unique perspectives that drive the creation of their books. Please visit ClaireMJohnsonWrites.com to check out her new book, Fog City, and her upcoming releases. And thank you so much for joining today, and let's keep these stories going.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa, for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.